They say Pisces women love to fantasize. Let's set aside astrology for a moment and just talk about fantasizing. Many people who watch a lot of idol dramas end up fantasizing that their own lives are also like those dramas. To cater to this need, female leads in these shows are often portrayed as Mary Sues. Characters who can do anything, are loved by all men, and have the world revolving around them. Why do some people get so lost in these fantasies? Because just imagining a beautiful future can be addictive. In your imagined world, you are the complete master of your life. So, life is an imagination, and imagination brings you joy. But the future is not the same as imagination. In idol dramas, if the female lead is mistreated by her boss, a domineering CEO will buy the company, make her the boss, and have the original boss work for her. But in reality, if you're mistreated by your boss, you still have to go to work the next day. This is the gap between reality and imagination. Daydreaming is fine, but if you believe in it too much, you will end up disappointed in life. This is why we are often unhappy. Welcome to Audible Wisdom. We are going to talk about the book, Stumbling on Happiness. This book became an Amazon bestseller as soon as it was published, and it was on the New York Times bestseller list for 23 consecutive weeks. It states that your predictions about the future are biased. If you live according to these predictions and design your future incorrectly, you will end up unhappy because you didn't get what you expected. The author of this book, Daniel Gilbert, is a psychology professor at Harvard University and an authority in the field of prediction biases. He was the first to examine human happiness from the perspective of prediction biases. Happiness is the lifelong pursuit of every person, and no one will refuse the opportunity to enhance their happiness. This book, Stumbling on Happiness, tells you why humans have prediction biases and how to avoid them. Understanding these issues will allow you to make yourself happier. Next, let's explore the biases of human imagination. The first bias is projection bias. In the 19th century, physicist Lord Kelvin, considered one of the most visionary scientists, famously said, "Heavier-than-air flying machines are impossible." At that time, many scientists agreed because, given the technological level of that era, it was hard to imagine that humans could fly a machine weighing hundreds of tons. Everyone's imagination of the future is confined to their specific region, era, and circumstances. In reality, feelings about the future are often just reactions to the present, which is the first bias of imagination, projection bias. The second bias is emotional adaptation bias. Emotional adaptation means that no matter if something is good or bad, after experiencing it multiple times, your emotional response becomes less intense. You've likely experienced this. You can fall asleep with the noise of a TV in the background, but on a quiet night, a slight footstep can wake you up. This is because the human brain is not sensitive to absolute amounts of stimuli, but is very sensitive to changes and differences. When something wonderful happens for the first time, it feels amazing, but if it happens repeatedly, the wonder diminishes. The first time something good happens, you're the happiest, but as it keeps happening, your reaction fades. This is called emotional adaptation. Emotional adaptation also applies to bad things. The famous movie star Christopher Reeve, who played Superman, unfortunately fell from a horse and was paralyzed from the neck down, requiring a ventilator to breathe. Yet he said, "I've never appreciated the people around me more than now." Psychology explains this phenomenon. After traumatic events, people undergo a process of adaptation and recovery. Bad things do affect us, but the intensity and duration of these effects are not as long-lasting as you might think. This is emotional adaptation bias. The third bias is memory bias. Some believe their experience is the best predictor of future judgments, and many firmly believe this, but memory is unreliable. We've all had the experience of waiting in line at the supermarket, thinking our line is moving too slowly, switching to another line, only to see our original line start moving faster. This isn't fate playing tricks on you. It's a problem with our memory. Waiting is boring and makes time feel longer, so we think it happens frequently. The most unlikely events are often the ones we remember the most vividly. Using memories to predict the future is unreliable. Memory is a process of reconstruction, and if these memories are flawed, our predictions about the future will be biased. The fourth bias of imagination seems to be caused by the different states at different time points. If you make choices for immediate experiences, variety often increases our happiness. However, if you make choices for experiences at several future time points, and there is a time gap between each experience, then blindly using the principle of variety will reduce happiness. For example, if you have the opportunity to taste 5 dishes for free at a restaurant, and you know beforehand that their braised pork is your favorite, if you use this opportunity all at once, you definitely won't order 5 portions of braised pork. You would choose 1 braised pork and 4 other different dishes, and you would be very satisfied with that meal. But here comes the key point. If you can only use this opportunity once a week, 1 dish at a time, and the restaurant asked you to plan for these 5 times in advance, would you still do it this way? If you do, and you order 5 different dishes including braised pork, you might end up being disappointed with 4 out of the 5 meals. Therefore, you should choose to order 5 portions of braised pork, ensuring that each weekly visit to the restaurant is enjoyable because you get to eat your favorite dish. In short, if you make choices for immediate experiences, variety often increases our happiness. But if you make choices for experiences at several future time points, and there is a time gap between each experience, blindly using the principle of variety will reduce happiness. This is the 4th bias of imagination, caused by the different states at different time points. The 5th bias of imagination is the superstition of choice bias. People always believe that having choices is better than not having choices. But is this really the case? If you are looking for a job and finally find a good opportunity, you will cherish this hard-won opportunity. However, if several companies want to hire you at the same time, you will keep comparing and can't make up your mind. This will make you very anxious, and once you make a decision, you might still wonder if the other companies you didn't choose would have been better. If you think like this, your current choice will make you unhappy. You see, having many choices does not make you as happy as you imagine. This is the 5th bias of imagination, the superstition of choice bias. People always believe that having choices is better than not having choices, but this is not the case. In fact, when there are too many options, not only is the process of choosing painful, but the satisfaction with the chosen option also decreases during the experience. Next, let's talk about ways to avoid prediction biases. First, understand which types of prediction biases you are prone to. Try to recall the predictions you made in the past, see which ones were wrong, and analyze why they were wrong. For example, think about what you expected your life to be like a year ago, and see how many of those expectations have been met, and how many haven't, and why. Second, know that the future is not something imagined out of thin air, but something predicted through rational analysis and actual data. You can gather a lot of information, understand all aspects of what you are going to do, and then make a more objective judgment. For instance, if you are planning to change jobs, you should learn about the new company's background, prospects, colleagues' reviews, etc., rather than just relying on your imagination to make a decision. Third, accept uncertainty and change. The future is full of variables, and you cannot expect every prediction to be 100% accurate. You can make a rough plan and then adjust flexibly based on actual circumstances. For example, if you plan to save money for a trip this year but some unexpected expenses disrupt your plan, you can consider postponing the trip or shortening it rather than feeling frustrated because your plan was disrupted. Lastly, learn to adjust your expectations. If you have too high expectations for the future, even if the outcome is good, you may still feel dissatisfied. So, learn to be content with what you have, and try to lower your expectations for the future, making it easier to feel satisfied and happy. To summarize, there are 4 ways to avoid prediction biases: understanding your own prediction biases, rational analysis and actual data, accepting uncertainty and change, and adjusting your expectations. So that's it for today. Let's summarize. We all strive for happiness. However, our predictions about the future can easily be off. There are 5 major types of prediction bias. They are projection bias, emotional adjustment bias, memory bias, ignoring differences in states at different points in time bias, and superstitious selection bias. Because of these limitations of the imagination, can cause us to misconceive our future. When we don't get the happiness we expect, we feel disappointed and unhappy. The best way to avoid prediction bias is to use other people as surrogates, using the wisdom of others to correct prediction bias. to achieve happiness in life. But in life, we tend to think we are different. We don't want to refer to other people's experiences. That is why we are not happy. The author reminds us, there are many factors that influence our future happiness. Don't feel unhappy just because the future doesn't meet our expectations. In any case, we are inevitably moving into the future. Even if it's hard to see what the future looks like, we have to decide what we want to pursue and what we want to avoid. It's right to pursue happiness. We have more freedom of choice. Happiness is still in our hands. Well, that is the summary of today's content. Congratulations on completing another book. I hope today's sharing has inspired you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.